Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Blazer Metrics podcast. We did quite a few there in a short span of time. Welcome back, Larry. Welcome back to Portland. Welcome back from your road trip of excitement in Vegas. And
It's a long drive.
yeah, so just tell me, like, how did it go? Like, was things like, did you guys do well? And it was like what, baseball or I?
Yeah, we didn't do as well this time. We won the whole thing. So there's multiple sessions. It's a massive tournament that takes
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 weeks. In our first one down, we won the whole thing. Went and played with a different bracket, and we didn't do as well. But I mean, it's fine. It's still fun to go down. You see a lot of people, and it's fun to compete. And then, the trip back was altered because I ended up buying a car down out of Arizona and driving it back. So that's what took me so long to get back, because that's a long ass drive. And I stopped and saw some friends in Idaho on the way, so I made it longer.
What'd you buy?
Just something I'd always wanted, but from back in college. And it's nothing big. It's a Toyota Celica GTS TRD
Oh, okay.
edition. But I've been looking for years, 10 plus years, and this was about the nicest one I found in the entire country. Just
Wow.
happened to be close enough that, well, 1,000 miles, that almost 1,000 miles, that I could drive it home. It's in immaculate condition.
Well,
So
that's cool.
yeah, I was pretty happy with that, to be able to find something that I'd always wanted. And I might tune this up a little bit. Nothing too extravagant, but just it's a gorgeous car for being 20 years old. So I was pretty happy. Just a bucket list thing from when I was younger.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. Congrats on that. I bet that was a hell of a drive, though.
Good times.
So let's see. I mean, I think we did a show after the holiday trade. We definitely did that. And I think we talked a little bit about Brogdon and Williams. And initially, because we did that show before Media Day, so I think a lot has happened since then. Um, First of all, we thought Brogdon was going to be dealt, and it doesn't look like, unless something comes up, like that's an amazing deal. It doesn't sound like he's going to be gone until maybe the deadline. But
I thought that they would try and move him before, fairly quickly, like they did with Holiday, just so he wasn't taking minutes from the young kids. But maybe he can mentor and tutor a little bit, and they'll still end up moving him. It'll be at a little later date. Maybe it pumps up the volume a little bit when there's a number of contenders that could use him, because there was already teams that inquired. So maybe and like I said, I don't know what you're going to get out of him, because it's not going to be the holiday market. You might get a first and a player and have to eat a crappy contract or something like that. But I think you'll get something, and I think people will inquire about Williams and Grant as well. It's just whether they want to move them, or what they want to do going forward.
it sounds like Billups and Cronin care very deeply about having veterans on the team. So it's not just, we have so many rookies and young guys that are under 25. Probably half the team is young. And even the old grizzled veterans at this point are Aiton and Williams and Thibault, who are like 25. And it's like, so having somebody like Brogdon, who's 30, but that's ancient on this team. Grant and Brogdon are grizzled old veterans compared to
That's it.
everyone
29,
else.
20, 29, 30. The next person down, I think, is Guap Reed is 27, and Thibault's 26, I believe. I mean, there's a lot in the 25 and under category.
Yeah. So I don't know. It sounds like they might hold on to them at least for half the season, till the deadline. Um, just I bet just to see where we are at, right? Like if the team's playing really well, they might just run it. I don't know. I kind of get a feeling like if the team's playing well, they might not trade them. If they're close to it. Do
What
you
we
think they're gonna go tanking or not? I just can't tell. I don't have a good read.
define well. What is well?
Let's say in contention for a play-in spot. Do they tank or do they like? What if they're miraculously in the 8th seed? Right? What do? Do they punt it and get rid of Brogdon and Grant? I don't know about Williams. It's hard to tell. I'm really not sure.
It depends on what the offers are.
Yeah.
I mean, being in a playoff chase is good experience, especially when you're on your way up. That's why I didn't have a problem with tanking the last couple of years because this wasn't a young team. Grant and Hart and Dame and CJ and Nurk and some of the players in the last 2-3 years. Those weren't young teams. Those were veteran teams, and we still sucked. So man, miss the playoffs, get a lottery pick, get better because you're not getting a free agent. So this team is very young. A playoff chase would do wonders for them.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I still think if you get a good offer for Brogdon or Grant, I think you have to take that and move on and keep playing and fighting. And I don't think you would need to really tank. I think if you traded one or both of those guys, I think you're going to tank anyhow.
yeah.
Um, you're not going to have to hold guys out with just slight injuries.
I still think, here's the thing. If I'm Joe and I'm looking at our guard rotation, and we were going to get into rotation more later, but if I'm looking at our guard rotation, what still bothers me is I don't want an undersized backcourt. I don't care how good of a scorer Simons is. He's a terrible defender, one of the worst in the league. And we have, I don't know, 7 years of experience with undersized crap defense, backcourts. And
Well, I think it's more than that. I think it goes back, but regardless, yes, it has been proven not to work.
again and
Now,
again.
maybe Scoot. There's been some things coming out of training camp that Scoot is at least trying, and he's being pesky on defense and giving effort, and that's great. But Simons is still a very poor defender, and he's an undersized two guard. Man, we've done this to death. It's just it's different names on the backs of the jerseys, but we have done this to death, and so I'm not. It's nothing against Ant or any of the players there. It's just when are we going to finally figure out we need more size? So we got more size up front. That's great, but now with the players that we have, it looks like Shaden's going to end up with a lot of minutes at small forward, and
Which is terrible.
I,
We
don't
have the
see him.
size though. That's the thing. We have the size. We need to use it. And that's why I don't know. I just have this suspicion like Brogdon is perfect as a backup guard if you're starting Scoot and Shaden because he's a veteran. He's a 6th man of the year. He can play point guard or shooting guard. He's 6'5". He's a good defender. So like he is perfect for this team because he's not old, but he's not young. So he's a nice steadying guy that you could bring off the bench at either position. I still think you got to trade Simons. I don't. Yes, he's a great scorer. He's too short. He's a terrible defender. And his best position, despite what they're trying to say about him being, a guard, he can play either one. He's a lead guard, man. He needs the ball in his hands. He should be playing point guard. That's where he's going to do the most damage. And unfortunately, that's where Scoot is going to be. That's what Scoot is. Scoot is a pure point guard. He is not a shooting guard. So, yeah, Simons is a perfect 6-man too, but I don't think he's only 24? He's not going to want to come off the bench. I just don't see it. He wants to be the guy. So I honestly, if it was up to me, I would be looking to move Simons at the trade deadline for a young forward. Somebody that can start right away.
Unless he goes just nuts. Brogdon's going to get more than Simons at the trade deadline because he's a proven veteran. He's a better defensive player. He's more of a two-way player. That's what contending teams want. Contending teams are not going to need a volume undersized two guard. I can't think of, I mean, pick a team out there that you think will be in the top 8, 10 teams in the league. Who needs Ant?
I don't think it would be a contending team. I think it would be a young team that needs a primary scorer, somebody that can just, fill it up, to get buckets. And Simons can do that. I mean, in spades, he's
Well,
a really good scorer.
very good score, but that may be true. But if it's a young up and coming team that's not contending, they're not going to give you much for him because it's not urgent for them. They don't care. It's not going to make any difference to them. They could wait and do it in the summertime. It's there's no rush. What creates value is an impending situation, and Joe created that with Dame going to the Bucks. All right, well now teams in the East had to do something, and Boston ponied up the most,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
at least the most that gave us the opportunity to even go get more. So that's what created that opportunity. And I just don't think, unless he just goes nuts, unless he's putting up 25 on 50, 40, 90, I
He
don't
might,
see where
though.
he's.
I mean, he might.
He might.
Without Lillard, he was a tear. He could, I mean, he was scoring and getting assists at a good clip. He just is a terrible defender. And so if we didn't have Scoot, I'd still actually probably be comfortable with him as the point guard. But Scoot, I think, is going to be. I mean, there's. I don't like to put mantles on people, but there is a chance that Scoot could be a generational point guard. Like, I mean, everything you're hearing about him, his feel for the game, his ability to find the open man and score. I mean, I don't want to get too excited, but gosh, some of the signs are just there. He could be the next point guard, the next great,
Well,
great point
It's
guard.
hard. It's hard not to because he has the speed, he has the explosiveness, he has the vision. So it's just a matter of his shot, which I don't think is bad. I just think he hasn't worked on it a lot because he could always get by people, and now he's going to have to work on it. And I think he's a hard worker, so I believe that will come. It's hard not to get excited about that. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got all the tools and he's got the strength. This isn't people have compared him to Derrick Rose. He's a lot bigger than Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
He's thick. He's going to play football. I mean, he's a strong, thick 19-year-old kid that's going to get stronger. There's not a lot not to like.
Well, and Rose just wasn't the distributor, right? Like, he was an explosive scorer and probably a little bit better athlete than Scoot. I know people compare him to Wall. I actually like that comparison in a lot of ways. I think Wall's a worse shooter, but Wall's a really good distributor. I mean, he put up some really good assist numbers.
Very good distributor. And I think Scoot's going to be a better distributor than he is scorer at first, outside of his ability to get in the lane. But I think people are going to dare him to shoot back off of him, which is going to make it tougher for him to drive. But he still can find people, and he's going to have shooters. Aiton can pick and pop. Grant can shoot it from the outside. Ant can certainly
Simons,
shoot
Sharp
it.
can
Shaden
shoot.
it a
Yeah.
little.
Heck, if
Thibault
Thibault,
showed
yeah.
last year he could hit it from the corner.
Yeah, if Thibault can do it. Murray, if they give him time, it seems to be an okay shooter. So, yeah, I'm really excited about him, but I just think that's, kind of once again, I don't see a place for Simons long term. And so, hey, you're right. Maybe the deadline is not when it would happen. It would be next summer. But if we hold on to Brogdon, I think that would be why. If Brogdon's okay with not being on a contender and being kind of this,
Which I don't think he is okay with that.
I don't think so either.
Not for very long.
I think he's saying the right things. I think Cronin's saying the right things, but I'm just kind of spitballing here because the problem is, though, as you were saying, you think maybe he has more value than Simons, and it's so hard to gauge his value right now because the offer that Boston was getting ready to accept was terrible. I mean, it was Marcus Morris and the 30th pick in the 2023 draft. I mean, that's not much. And that is not much. Morris is terrible, and
Yeah, I think the Blazers can get a little better than that. Not a ton, but a little better. But I don't know what you would get for Ant. And Brogdon's actually cheaper than Ant.
well,
And a better defender and a bigger player, and maybe not the scorer, maybe, but he was sixth man of the year. That and until Ant does something like that, Brogdon's better.
well. So here's the issue, and it's for both players. It's so hard to gauge their value because Boston was in a hurry
Right.
to pull off the Porzingis trade, so they were under the gun. So it's almost like maybe they were willing to accept less value on Brogdon, and that's why the trade fell through because they didn't have time for the Clippers to go through the medical exam, and so. Is that really his value? I would tend to think no. I mean, he's the reigning sixth man of the
That's why
year.
I think it'll be a little. That's why I think it'll be a little higher.
But Simons is also kind of equally hard to gauge because we were trying to pair him with the third pick, and teams knew that we had to trade that pick because of Dame. So it was like, do we really know what his value is? Because we were trying to go for these big swings, Bridges. Well, we really didn't hear a lot in terms of like what was out there, but like we couldn't get Bridges with him and Scoot. Supposedly Siakam didn't want to come here. I don't know if Zion was ever really in play. Supposedly there was some talk about Paul George, but I don't know if that was real. So like, I honestly don't know what his value is, and so we kind of think like, well, nobody wants him, and it's kind of the same conversation that we were having about Hero, right? Like nobody really wants to pay up for
I
a.
don't think that it's nobody. It's not that nobody wants him, but it's it's a volume. It's a guy that needs the ball in his hand, which takes it away from the rest of your team. And if your team is good, why would you want that? If they're bad, it doesn't matter. And he doesn't play defense.
But it's so weird.
So
Look what we got for CJ, just like what 2 years ago? Not even 2 years ago. I mean, CJ never been an all-star,
CJ
you know.
CJ was a lot more established than Ant
Yeah,
was.
I know, but I think he was making a lot more money,
He
and
was.
he's a lot older, and they kind of have similar strengths and weaknesses. I think Ant's actually a better passer than CJ, but I don't know. I just don't see a long term. I know we need young players that are talented on a rebuilding team, but I just don't see a place for Simons if unless he's totally willing to accept a bench role. And I just don't. I am not going to be happy if they try to make Sharp a small forward. I don't like it. I want a long athletic small forward for once.
It
So
would be nice.
I know we want to talk about Cronin, and there's been some more updates about kind of how things went down with Dame, and Joe spoke about it on Media Day. Of course, it was your favorite media guy and my favorite media guy, Aaron Fentress, who got up there and asked the question that we all knew he would about Dame wanting to rescind his trade request, and Joe said that he told Dame he thought it would be a bad idea, but he also clarified that it was never rescinded. Dame was not saying I want to rescind my trade request. And
Just
Joe,
wanted to pause until he could get
yeah,
to Miami.
yeah, because it was presented in that article as if Dame was saying I want to rescind my trade request, and that's not what happened. So,
What the media got it wrong. I am shocked.
well, I don't even know at this point if I would call Chris Haynes the media. At least when he's dealing with Dame, he is not the media. He is
No,
Dame's friend.
certainly not objective. That's for sure.
There was zero objectivity there. But interesting. Our old buddy Ben Golliver from back in the Blazer Edge days, who now writes for the Washington Post, which is just crazy. I mean, he's gone a long way in the last
It
10 plus years. That's really a huge jump. But he wrote an article and presented some information that it was actually Jody in September, which it sounded like before the conversation with Dame. I'd have to go look at the time timestamps on that. But Jody basically said that she didn't want Dame back. She wanted to turn the page. I'd have to go get the exact quote, but yeah, she was ready to move on. So I don't know if this is really on Joe. It sounded like it was coming from ownership.
Well, regardless of where it came from, the rescind was not really a rescind. I mean, he's just
Yeah.
asking back till something could be done because he realized it wasn't going to get done, that they didn't have the pieces, which he should have known from the beginning they didn't have the pieces. They never had the pieces. So it wasn't who's taking whose call. It's like, well, what are they going to call about? Nothing.
No. It's
So
just it's so funny. I have listened to every significant national podcast that's out there. I mean, Windhorst, I've listened to Haynes, I've listened to you go down the list, Zach Lowe and Sam Vicini, and I've listened to like, I don't even know, 10 different, 15 different podcasts. I haven't heard one negative thing about the haul that the Blazers got. Most of them,
no, most people are very impressed with what Joe did, how he did it, the leverage he created. I mean, they think it all sorts of different verbs to describe how he worked this out, and some big time guys, some small time guys, front office guys were very impressed with it. He did, given the situation, we've talked about this before. I think he did an incredible job, and certainly more than he was going to get from Miami, because whatever he got from Miami, those were not movable pieces afterwards. Whatever you got was it. That was the end of the road. Cue the boy band that sings that song. That
yeah.
was it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really been. You and I have talked about this to death, but I really haven't been a fan of Jovic and Hawkes, honestly, and so the fact that he went and got, even if you remove Ayton and you say, okay, Ayton could have been rolled into any deal, okay, whatever, but Brogdon and Williams are better pieces than Hawkes and Jovic. And
It's not close.
we don't need two more project players on rookie contracts. We've got Murray, we've got Kamara, we've got Rupert, we've got, I mean, you just go down the list. We've got Jabari, we've got Scoot, we've got Sharp. I mean, we have so many young guys that we're not even really going to have time for all of them.
Well, and that was the problem with Miami's offer. It wasn't that the players were necessarily bad. I mean, Jovic and Hawkes could develop into serviceable players, maybe, top 8 guys, maybe. Um, Hero was what he was, but Portland, like you're saying, Portland already had all those pieces. They had a bunch of young guys that they were going to develop. They had scoring guards that don't play defense. They had all those guys. So it wasn't attractive because it's like, well, that doesn't do anything for us. We want young size. Well, they got it. They got Ayton and they got Williams. Miami could offer nothing close to that. And they still have
No,
a piece that they can move. So it was kind of a moot point. And all the people that were saying, well, people around the league are watching. They're watching what's going to happen to Dame. They're, what's going to happen. Well, we don't get free agents. So that whole argument is BS anyhow. But if it had any legitimacy to it at all, look where Cronin has sent players in his 2 whatever years as GM. Has he sent anyone to a dumpster fire?
no, and it started with Norman Powell, who's from Los
From
Angeles,
LA.
and Joe sent him there for basically nothing. I mean, God, we didn't get anything out of that trade. Is there a single?
No.
There's not a single player left from that trade on our team. Keon Johnson's gone. Winslow's gone. We stretched and cut Bledsoe, and I don't even remember. I feel like
That
I'm
was out.
yeah, and yeah. So I mean, there's no one left from that trade on the team. But we sent Norm to LA where he wanted to be. We sent CJ. Now supposedly CJ
Well, And now, but back up. Not only where he wanted to be,
But it's a
he's
contender.
teammates with Kawhi and Paul George. Now they can't stay on the court due to health reasons, but it's not like that was a vapid roster that had no talent. It was a
Hmm.
very talented roster. So he and Rocco went down there to a better situation than they had here, and Norman Powell got to go home. So great situation for them. So now CJ.
Then, and we don't know the list. That never really came out, like what team CJ had put on his list, but there was supposedly a list. And the Pelicans were not at the top of the list, but they were on the list. And he was able to send CJ to New Orleans and get the pieces back that he needed to go get Jeremy Grant. So, and, he got Josh Hart as well. So, that, looking back, I was not really thrilled with the trade at the time. But looking back, that was a good trade. I mean, we got
You got
Grant.
Hart and Chris Murray out of it.
To me, Grant is kind of the same caliber as CJ, but he plays defense, so that's kind of already better. But he just plays he plays a position of need, right? But he doesn't rebound,
Absolutely.
so he has warts, right? But he scores, he can shoot, he's long, he plays a position of need. So, I mean,
But
to me,
again,
that's a win.
Where did the evil Joe Cronin send CJ? To a loaded roster
Yeah,
with Ingram and Zion and Valanciunas and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, and I mean, it goes on and on and on. They're loaded. Now they
yeah,
can't put it together,
yeah.
but didn't mean it wasn't a loaded roster. So again, sent him to a very good situation with a lot of talent.
Yeah. Well, and then and then you've got Hart. And again, I'd heard that Hart had given Joe a list and the Knicks were his number one choice. But I think he was okay with potentially going to he wanted to go back east, right? He wanted to be closer to his home. Obviously, the Knicks was the perfect scenario for him, but my understanding from what I had heard from other reports that there were other teams, and the Knicks just happened to give the best offer. So, and he spoke, that was kind of at the same time as that whole Gary Payton deal,
He spoke
where
glowingly.
once again, he sent Gary back where he wanted to go. The guy never wanted to leave Golden State. It would have been funny if he'd sent him somewhere like Detroit, but yeah, he sent him back to the Golden State Warriors, and then they threw us under the bus and drug our name through the mud with all that Toradol crap. And but
Well, and Hart had nothing but good things to say.
oh yeah, he came out after that
Cronin.
and just glowing.
Well, and so did Holiday just recently.
Yeah, so yeah, and then you got Holiday saying that he gave a list to Joe, and Joe got him to Boston, and he was extremely appreciative. So we only have one outlier who is pissed at Joe. And from everything I've heard, he's the only player that gave a list of one team. So, yeah, I mean, Joe is going to do...
Evil Joe sent him to what is probably, it's them in Boston in the East, and whoever wins that has a good shot of winning a title.
Yeah.
I think Denver's taken a little step back. I don't think anyone else is at that level. So whoever comes out of the East, I think, should probably win it. So Evil Joe sent Dame to the top one or two team in the league. The best roster you could possibly put him on. So the NBA is watching to see what Joe's going to do. It's just a huge steaming pile of donkey dung because there's just no truth to it. He has done nothing but treat these players with absolute respect and put them in tremendous situations with a lot of talent around them. Doesn't guarantee anything, but he certainly hasn't sent anyone to the NBA version of Siberia.
Well, and the other thing is, he's been playing some just 4D chess because sending Dame to the Bucks So first of all, there's like a few different layers to this, right? So he sends Dame to the Bucks, which keeps Giannis happy, or Giannis. Sorry, I'm terrible with that, but Giannis. So he keeps Giannis happy. Um, Giannis will probably re-sign, which I think that's next
Right.
summer. Um, and so we get their pick, the 2029 pick, and then we get swaps in 28 and 30. So what he's done is he keeps Giannis in Milwaukee, and they're going to want to keep trying to keep that core together. So they're not going to rebuild anytime soon. So the fact is, those picks later are going to be worth a lot. I mean, I just don't see Milwaukee being able to turn it around by 28, 29, 30. When Dame is finally gone in 3 or 4 years, when Middleton is gone, in 3 or 4 years,
Lopez will be gone.
Lopez will be gone in probably a couple years.
Right.
Giannis is only 29 now, I think.
Right.
So,
But
but
Middleton probably gone.
I don't know if I see Giannis there in 5 6 years. He might go somewhere like LA. Once the team's kind of fallen apart, I just don't see they're not going to be able to rebuild around him. So we've he set up the Bucks to kind of they're going to have immediate success, but those later picks are worth a lot. And then he flips. One of the first things I said to you when Dame was traded was like, did he have to get like did they make him promise not to send Drew somewhere to the East? Because like I can't even imagine Milwaukee making. I mean that's risky, right? You bring in Dame, but you're also giving the Blazers Drew, who can really change. You know,
He's as much of a Dame antidote as there is in the
yeah,
league.
yeah. I mean, it's just kind of funny. So, I mean, one of the first things I said when that trade happened was that Jode created an arms race, and so that's how he was able to extract so much value out of the Celtics for Drew. And once,
They had to.
yeah,
Otherwise, they're
they
just
were done.
playing for a distant second place, and you're
Yeah,
wasting prime years of Tatum and Brown, which they couldn't afford to do. It probably comes down to the end to who's the healthiest. I don't know,
yeah,
who wins that. The Bucks have more size for sure. The Celtics are a little bereft in that area, but it's going to be tough. How do you stop a Dame Giannis pick and roll with Lopez in the corner and Middleton on the wing? And good luck with that. Bobby Portis lurking around for any misses. But then, you know, Drew Tatum Brown is pretty tough too. Horford will be in there. As an IQ guy. Porzingis, who knows what you get out of him. I think he's in a better situation. I think he's going to play well. Those are going to be titanic must-watch games.
but what's funny though is it's all the teams. I mean, every single one of the mega contenders right now have histories of bad injuries, and they're all old. So like, you've got Boston. You've got they're counting on Horford, who's 1,000 years old. You've got you've got Milwaukee, but then on the same token, you've got the Suns, who have Durant, who's getting really old. Beal's not young and is constantly injured. You've got Golden State, who Draymond's already hurt and is probably going to miss a month of the season.
Boy, there's a team you're watching the scoreboard
Oh
for
yeah, oh yeah.
every.
I already didn't like them, but now I really get to root against them.
You're just you're rooting for whoever they're playing every night. If you're a Blazer fan, you're rooting for two teams. You want the Blazers to do well and not get blown out, and you're rooting for Golden State to lose. Or you don't wish injuries on anybody, but if somebody just turns a nagging ankle and is out for a while, oh darn.
Yeah, I mean they're just. I mean, all some of these teams are just made of glass, right? Even Denver. I mean, you look at Denver. Murray's been hurt.
Denver took a step back. They lost
Yeah,
some
they
key
lost some
pieces and they
players,
did not recruit them.
but several of their guys are injury prone, and so I mean things can go sideways for them too, because without some of their guys, they are a first round or second round team. Jokic can only
Well,
do so
they've still got
much.
their core. I mean, they've still got their Jokic and Murray and their forwards. Porter and oh gosh, the guy from Orlando.
Aaron Gordon. Yeah, but
Aaron Gordon.
but like
So
look at those
yes,
guys
they
though.
can all get injured. They can all get injured, but if they're healthy,
If they're healthy, they're
it's the
amazing.
secondary pieces that they're missing that they lost a few of those, and that's
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
but it just seems like whoever stays healthy, the longest is going to have the best chance of winning, because all these teams are kind of have had a history of being injury prone. So, but looking at Boston though, I didn't realize this at the time. I think I was listening to Windhorst or maybe Zach Lowe. I can't remember. They kind of all run together in my head now because I've listened to so many of these dang things. But they were talking about Boston's financial situation. Boston, initially I was like, oh, how good's that pick going to be? Because Brown and Tatum are both really young. They're only like 25. So 5-6 years from now, they're in their early 30s. That's not going to be that bad. The problem is financially, they're in a bad way. I mean, you've got Drew, Brown, Tatum, Porzingis. They said Derek White's due for an extension.
White's due is
Tatum is due for
Tatum's due for another one.
another supermax. So they are going to have a very hard time keeping together their roster. Even if they just keep Brown and Tatum, that's a ton of money.
I think they can keep them, but the problem is they can't do anything else because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be over the apron, and I don't know how easy it's going to be able to move some of these players come this next year when some of the restrictions get a little tighter. That's why some of the moves are being made now.
Yeah,
I watched some of the people down in Phoenix that it had to be done now, or it was going to be much tougher next year.
yeah,
So they should be able to keep them, but they're going to be in a Golden State situation where they're 50 million over the luxury tax, and because of the new restrictions on the salary cap, they're just not going to be able to add anybody or make very
yeah.
many moves.
And they can't even trade their
And
picks. I mean, that's the problem. A lot of these
yeah,
teams are trying to use their picks right now because if you're in the second apron, you cannot trade your picks. So, which really limits what these teams can do. So, I think that while Boston's picks might not be great, they're going to be in a tough spot too in a few years financially. And I think already Brown is there's already been a lot of rumors about Brown's kind of discontent with the team. So who knows? He got paid, and a year from now he might be like, I don't want to be here. So it'll be interesting. I don't think Boston's as rock solid as maybe
and
people thought.
especially if they lose. Let's say I don't see how they're not one of the top two records in the East, but let's say they were third somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Who else would
Yeah,
be above them? Let's say they were third and had to face the Bucks in the second round and lost.
mm-hmm.
I think that starts to get a little jinky.
Yeah, that'd be a couple years in a row where they went out early compared to where they should have gone out. So yeah, I mean they've regressed from a couple of years ago when they were in the finals. They're definitely not as good as they were. So yeah, I think Joe. The good thing is he spread it around. He didn't get picks from one team. He got picks from different teams: Golden State, Milwaukee, Boston, and then who knows if he sends Brogdon out, that could be another team like the Clippers or the Sixers. It's hard to say, but he really moved it around, and I mean, I was just so impressed with how he played the market. Creating that arms race, creating that urgency to compete and match what the Bucks had done. So I'm really impressed with Joe after this offseason. It started off rough, but he really did a good job. And even Dan Lebitard, who was the ultimate Heat homer. I was watching one of his episodes after kind of all the trades went down, and he was just like, he spoke a lot about Joe's past and essentially said, this guy worked his way up from an intern within the organization. He's been there for a really long time, and he's fighting for his career. And he's like, You can't worry about Damian Lillard's feelings. You can't worry about Damian Lillard's future. This is your career. You might not get another shot as a GM. If the Blazers are sold in the next few years, which is possible, is the owner going to come in and want a different GM because they want their own guy? So he's like, I mean, the words that Lebitard said was, you burn it to the ground, your relationship with Lillard. You burn it to the ground. You torch it because you gotta worry about the team and you need to worry about your own career.
Well, he certainly put his stamp on it, and as he should. I mean, this was a stale roster,
Yeah.
regardless of how good Dame was offensively. It wasn't transitioning to team success. I mean, he would hit. He had his 71 points against Houston, which was a JV team. I'm not 71 points is 71 points, but that was just a horrible squad that he played against that night, and
Yeah.
he put up some huge numbers. It was great. It was an amazing game, but it doesn't translate to, okay, well, where does that get us playoff wise? Where does that get us in terms of actually being a contender? The moments were much more than the sum of the parts, that the career, the whole time here. It just never worked out for whatever reason. It's not to blame anybody. It didn't, and he wasn't able to affect it enough, partially due to his size and partially due to he really only played one side of the ball. And that's, he's now in a situation where he doesn't have to be the best player. He can just be an offensive guy and the clutch guy and the finishing guy, and Giannis can go create havoc on both sides of the ball and be an MVP candidate, and Dame's is option 1B, and an incredible 1B, but that's the way he gets a title, as being a 1B. He's never going to get a title as 1A.
So I'm curious about this. I'm curious what your thought is. Do you think Dame is? Do you think he'll break 50 points again this season? Is he going to have one of those flamethrower games where he drops 50 or 60? Or is Dame going to pull himself back a bit? Because I've always noticed when he's playing on like an all-star team, or when he was on the Olympic team, Dame defers. He defers a lot. And I just don't know, like, have we kind of seen the last of that Dame? Is he going to still drop those big nights?
Giannis will turn an ankle and he'll be out, and Dame will go off in some game that there's some guys injured and he needs to. But in terms of if everyone's healthy and they're all out on the floor, no, I don't see. There's too much around him. There's too many.
Yeah.
He can't be taking 50 shots and leaving Giannis with 10, or not 50 shots, scoring 50 points and leaving Giannis with, 10, 12 shots, and then Middleton's getting none, and Lopez is getting none, and Portis is getting none, and Connaughton's getting. I mean, now Connaughton, who cares, but there's too many guys on that team that are used to scoring, used to competing at a high level, have won an NBA title. Yeah, they won a title before Dame's joining a team that has won a title.
So
then they should probably win another one, but it's not like they need him to come in and be something they didn't already have when they were healthy. They didn't win last year because they weren't healthy.
Yeah. Okay, so do you think Dame will break 10 assists per game on that roster? Like, because
that I think
he's
got the possibility of doing,
because he's never played with that much talent before, right? So
no,
I'm curious.
He's got a lot of different options, and no one can really. Who do you double up on? You can't double up on Dame anymore because you certainly can't double off Giannis. He's just going to dive to the hoop, and because he's so tall, you just lob it to him and he dunks it. Not like he's a 6'4", 6'5" guy. You lob it to him, and there's time to recover because of height. That doesn't work with him. Middleton can create and do his own stuff. So there's so many options. I can see him. I think his points might be down. In fact, I'm almost positive they'll be down. He's not scoring 32. His assists might be up.
So
he might have a career high.
He has only broken 8 assists per game once, back in 2019, 2020. He averaged 30 points and 8 assists and 4.3 rebounds. So I could see Dame around 24 and 10. I mean, I would love to see Dame around, because here's what I think. I think his free throws are going to go up. He was already not bad. He actually averaged almost 10. This was his. I didn't realize his were that high this season. So Dame usually over the last 10 years or so kind of hovered around 7 free throw attempts, 7, maybe 6.5, but kind of always in that 6 to 7 free throw attempt range.
He's going to get more calls and more respect because he's on
he almost had
contending
10
team on
though.
TV.
He almost had
Yeah.
10 a game this season, which was a huge
Well,
bump
and
up.
he might not have that many because I don't think he's going to have the ball in his hands quite that much.
No,
So that's what tempers
no,
some of the points and maybe some of the assists, because you can't just take the ball out of Giannis's hand. I mean, Giannis is an MVP. You don't take it from an MVP and give it to someone who's not.
yeah.
Regardless, I mean, and Dame's very good. And now at the end of games, yes. Um,
I don't think it'll go up more because he was the 7th highest free throw attempt in. Well, no, that was overall. That's not helpful. Where is that? Was like the total number, which doesn't really help. I'll have to look it up again. I still think that 10, almost 10 a game is insanely high. I don't. Yeah, I
that
think
is a lot. Well,
it might stay around that.
His usage rate was through the roof, and I mean, he was taking an incredible amount of shots because he had to. They weren't very good. Although they started good when he wasn't doing that. I'd be interested in seeing what did he score when they started 10-3. What was his points per game average?
That'd be
And
harder. I'd
then
have to go look at the
what was it?
splits, right? Um,
And maybe it was higher. I don't know.
oh, here we go. Here's how I check it. Okay, so Dame was 5th. So Giannis was number 1 at 12.3 free throw attempts per game. Embiid was 11.7. SGA was 10.9, and Luka was at 10.5. I don't really see him going up much more than that. If he stays around that 10 mark, I think what we'll see is Dame around maybe like 24 points per game. And what I would love to see if he got up to 10 assists.
You want Giannis's to go down.
Yeah, that's
You don't want him to
insanely
go
high.
down. I mean, because he was shooting a lot of those, in the fourth quarter, teams would just foul him, and that's not going to happen this year. Dame's going to have the
Yeah.
ball in his hands, and they're not going to be able to do that.
But let's see here. Field goal attempts. Dame was 3rd in field goal attempts per game. Actually higher than Giannis. He was just slightly, but he was behind Luka at 22 per game. Tatum was at 21. Dame was at 20.7. Donovan Mitchell.
He's
not
not
even
going to
close.
get that many. He's
Yeah.
not going to get that many.
Not even close to that. Jaylen Brown 20.6. Giannis was 6th at 20.3. So, I don't think he'll be anywhere near that. But I don't know. I could still see Dame right around like 24 points. I don't think he'll be less than 20. But yeah,
He's going to get over 20, mid-20s. Maybe his assist goes up. Hopefully, his as scary as it is, his efficiency might go up because he's going to get easier looks. He's just not. The teams aren't going to be able to just game plan for him completely because
yeah,
there's 3 other guys out there you got to account for.
yeah,
2 at a minimum, so 3 total. And then you've got Lopez just sitting in a corner. He's going to be wide open constantly.
yeah, yeah.
And so is Pat.
And that'll be an easy assist.
Pat Connaughton could have a career year.
Yeah, but like
Efficiency-wise,
Lopez,
he's not going to get the shots.
because that's the problem. Dame, I feel like Dame has always been a good distributor. He just was passing to players that were terrible. That just could not be relied upon to hit open shots. And so Dame getting
Yes and no. They're in the NBA. You watch these guys. Guys who can't shoot in warm-ups are just draining shots left and right. It's just, I think it's more style of play when you're that ISO oriented, and a guy gets a shot and he hasn't touched the ball for 20 minutes of real time. That might be 5 or 6 minutes of game time. But he hasn't touched the ball in 20 minutes of real time. He's got no rhythm. He's got no. It's like, oh, okay, now I'm wide open. I have to hit this shot.
Yeah.
because I might not get one again in, for a quarter because of how the Blazers played, just very ISO, very guard heavy,
Yeah.
handoffs, just running around, and eventually it would just get it back to Dame. It was a whole lot of movement and stuff just to get the ball back to Dame or Ant when Ant was in that role. And that's great. That gets them big numbers, but it's not winning games. You're not winning games and stuff with that,
Yeah.
especially from smaller players. So I don't know, and it'll be interesting to see the offense they run because Tear Bear's running that over there, and I think there's another former Blazer assistant there as well.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I I don't know. I kind of want to watch them this season just to see, but like I think Dame will finally get the credit that he deserves, even though he's already considered to be a great player. Like I think he'll show that he can fit in on a contender and still be really really good because he did that. I mean, when we had LaMarcus, and LaMarcus was the clear cut number one option, Dame had no problem just kind of fitting in, finding his little groove and still being effective. And so I don't think he's gonna have any issue with that. But I just
I don't think it'll be.
I hated iso ball. I really did, and that's another reason kind of why I want to get rid of Simons because he's from that mold. I mean, that's
He
what
grew up watching Dame and
and
CJ.
CJ, yeah, and Terry
He
having
grew up
Terry,
watching them get. He grew up watching them getting all the shots they want and not having to play defense. It was not exactly good mentorship.
yeah, no, and I just really I don't want to I don't want to see that again. I'm done with it. I love the fact that there all these reports are coming out of training camp that Scoot pushes the ball and he's a really great distributor. And if Simons can be there as kind of like a shooter and an emergency valve that he can dump it to and can score, and that's great. But I want to see movement. I want to see ball move. All I hear is Steve Jones in my ear. Ball movement, player movement. I want to see a better offense because I am just sick of iso ball. And it's interesting. Whenever we've been tanking or Dame's not around, the team plays better. They play a better brand of basketball. It's not great because the players weren't very good, but it was still just it
It's,
was more
it's
aggressive and
aesthetically, it's more pleasing. It's more fun. Yes, we didn't haven't had the pieces, but you hope you start to find some of those pieces. But you want to find those pieces in the right environment and the
mm-hmm,
right style of play.
mm-hmm,
And that was not it. Now we didn't have the talent, but they were much better when they shared the ball. And so yes, I hope they do that. I'm sure they're going to run more. Aiton's talked about how he can't. He's got to sprint up the court because as soon as he gets the ball in outlets, that Scooch is gone. He's like I gotta bust my ass just to be the trailer.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I don't know. I'm hoping that's the end of the iso ball because I just never liked it that much. I mean, it had some great memories. All the Dame's flamethrower scoring games where he just couldn't miss. I mean, those were fun. They were fun to watch, but you
There
just
were great
knew,
moments.
he was great for memories and moments, but you just knew that brand of basketball was not going to take you very far, into the playoffs. So I don't know. I did kind of want to talk rotation. We're right around 53 minutes. I wanted to talk rotation a little bit with you. I know that's kind of, but it's kind of boring. But that's kind of what people are talking about right now. Where the team kind of fits together, who's going to be in the kind of in the top 8 or 9 players. Let's see if I can.
Well, as of now, I think it's Scoot, Ant, Tease, Grant, Aiton, and then Shea, Rob, and Brogdon. I don't see. There's your 8, and I don't see how it's any much different than that. I just don't. I don't think they're going to start Shea at 3.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good for him. He's not big enough. Not that Tease is that much bigger, but he's more experienced. He's more of a veteran. Um, don't throw too many of these kids in the fire too fast. Let Shaden play more shooting guard. Let him play against some second team guys where he's not so overwhelmed. And I mean, the rotation's not bad. I mean, if these young guys can assimilate and learn and produce at all, it's not bad. It's not top six, but yes, I don't even know if they battle for a play in, but I can see in a year or two, depending on who they keep, there's a lot of talent there. It's what becomes of it. You got a lot of young guys that need to mature in a hurry altogether.
Yeah. Well, so I want to look at this real quick. So we'll do this. I've got. You can't really see it though. Is the problem? I want to. I want to take a look at like the rotation. It's probably too small. So we've got. So like if the top 8 are Scoot, so you think the starters are going to be Scoot, Simons, Thibault, Grant, Ayton, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the minimum number of minutes you would give Scoot?
28. Throw him in. I want to see him play.
Okay, I was thinking around 30. I thought 30, he's not, Dame would be around like 35, 36. I was thinking like 30, but you think 28 maybe?
Yeah. Well, because Brogdon's here.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem is you've got to have, if he's playing 30, 32 minutes and Ant's going to play 32, 34.
Yeah.
Shaden's got to get his. You think he's going to get 25. You want him on the court. Brogdon, you kind of owe him to get him minutes, so he's going to get, you'd think, 28. Well, we're already well over the 96 minutes for 3 guard spots, the 96 minutes for 2 guard spots. So we're well into someone's playing a bunch of minutes at small forward.
I think they're going to have to. I think they're going to have to give minutes to Sharp at small forward. So like, here's what I was thinking.
They're going to have to. They are going to have to.
Let's say you got Scoot at 30 minutes. Only at point guard. I just don't see, because of the other players, I don't see him playing any shooting guard. Okay.
Stop playing people out of position.
I think Simons is going to get some minutes at point guard. Maybe not many. Maybe just a few, But I guess it just depends on who's the first person off the bench. But I could see him still getting, maybe like 4 or 5 or something like that. Just a few minutes of playing time off the bench. Or he'll shift over to point guard or something like that. But I still see him getting a couple. Like, let's just say 4. So that leaves 34. So
when he and Brogdon are in the game, it's whoever has the ball.
Yeah. So I think so that puts you at about 34, which leaves 14 more minutes of point guard time. So you give that to Brogdon. That brings you up to the 48 minutes of point guard time. So then I would say Simons is probably around 30 minutes of shooting guard, so that would put him at 34 total. I think Sharp is probably going to get... So I don't think Thibault's going to get a lot of time. I don't think they can afford it. I think maybe 20 minutes, he'll...
But we got to get Brogdon some minutes at shooting guard because he didn't play much at point guard.
So
there's the problem.
I'm saying you got 14 minutes of point guard time for Brogdon. I just don't see him playing more than like 20 minutes. I don't see how they could do it. I really don't. I mean, without really massively sacrificing time for their young guys. Let's say you give Simons 30 minutes at shooting guard. You give Sharp... I guess it depends on how many minutes you want to give him. So, like, let's say you give 20 minutes at small forward to Thibault. That leaves 28 minutes. So you give Sharp those 28 minutes at small forward. Then you only need to get him... I want to give Scoot and Sharp around 30 minutes each. I think that's reasonable. So if you do, a couple minutes at shooting guard for Sharp, then you've still got what 16 minutes. So you could actually give Brogdon 30. I feel like maybe might be a little bit much. I don't know. I mean, that seems high to me.
Well,
But
you got 96 minutes between those two spots, so they could all play 32 minutes somewhere
yeah,
in the backcourt, but that leaves Shaden playing
small
all
forward. Yeah.
all small forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could. Okay, here's a question. Is there another small forward that you want to play? Do you play Kamara at small forward? Do you play Murray at small forward? Do you play Knox? I mean, so here's your roster. You got Scoot, Simons, Thibault, Grant,
Yeah, there's no.
Ayton.
I mean,
Like,
Shaden and Tease are going to take up the vast majority of those unless there's a blowout.
yeah. So here's your top eight, right? We already said this. Scoot,
But
Simons,
you want to get some of those young guys
couple minutes,
some
right?
minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
because you're in a situation where you're not winning. This is development time, so you want to play them some. That's why Brogdon can't be here for very long. And nothing against him as a player, good mentor, professional guy. But there's just it's it's causing a minutes log jam for players that need time. And him playing 30 minutes or 28 minutes or 25 minutes a night, what is it doing for the Blazers other than you know,
Yeah.
teaching, yes, but you got to be on the court and learn. And um, I don't think he'll be here long.
So
It really messes things up.
So who do you put? So like, let's say your top eight. We already kind of went over this, but that's Scoot, Simons, Thibault, Grant, Ayton as your starters. Then you got Brogdon, Sharp, Williams off the bench. So that's eight. Who else is in that rotation? Who else are you bringing out? Because so the other players that we've got Murray.
Probably depends on the night. I think they're going to try and run Murray and Kamara out there.
I think Jabari's
Some
in the rotation at least for now. I think
Jabari should be ahead of both of them. And he's going to be power forward probably more than he's a small forward. But he's going to get stuck out of position again.
so. Let's say Jabari is like the ninth man. I don't think. Here's the players I don't think are going to see the court much this year. I don't think Rupert's going to. I think Rupert's going to be playing on the remix most of the time. I think Knox maybe because he's kind of more of a veteran. They might keep him around, but I don't think they're going to play him much. But like in a pinch, I don't see any of these other guys getting minutes. Mania, Condit, Davis, Reith. I think Reith they'll keep around just in case.
Most of those guys aren't even going to make the roster.
Butler Jr. He might make the roster, but I don't. Butler, yeah,
Butler's a two-way.
Mays,
He's a two-way.
Baji, Butler, and Mays are all two ways. The guys that are just invites right now are Mania. Knox is technically on a 10-day. Knox, Mania,
I think
Condit,
he'll make it
and
unless they just figure there's nowhere he's going to get any minutes, and he's
well,
like, hey,
so the players that we know they're going to keep. There's 14 players there, so you've got one spot. So you've got Scoot, Simons, Thibault, Grant, Ayton, Sharp, Brogdon, Williams, Murray, Moses Brown, Jabari, Kamara, Rupert. That's 14 players. So you have one spot left. So does that spot go to Knox? Does it go to Reith? And the other guys I don't see making it. So are they going to want to have another big just in case in case like Williams or because Reith has shown himself to be serviceable. Right?
Reith would be serviceable, and they could use the size.
Mm-hmm. I just don't know if Knox really.
He's got opportunity. Reith's got opportunity to go back overseas and be a big time
player, yeah.
Versus barely getting off the bench here. I think he would rather do that. And Knox, playing no minutes behind a bunch of rookies probably isn't going to thrill him out. He may ask, like, "Hey, give me a chance to go somewhere else," or if he's on the roster, as soon as anyone gets hurt somewhere, he'll like, hey, can I be traded?
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of those guys, that's just practice. Those are just practice bodies.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's I would ideally like to see, like, if you don't even look at positions, right? You just look at players and how many minutes you would like them to get. There is what 48 times 5 is 100, 240. So you have 240 minutes total for any player. So if you count just what we've kind of talked, so Scoot at 30 minutes, Simon's at 34, Thibault at 20, Grant 34, Ayton, what do you think for Ayton? What would be a reasonable amount of time for Ayton? 32? 30?
Yeah, 30 somewhere in there, and
I
it depends on Williams' health. He might play a little more on nights that will, if they back to back. I bet they rest Williams.
I think Williams can
Uh,
also get some time at power forward. And
yeah,
or
I think
not
they'll play them
much,
together for a
but
little bit.
yeah, I think they'll play them together maybe a little bit. But that is 200 minutes right there. So all you've got left is 200. You got 40 minutes left. So if you give Brogdon 20 to 25 minutes, you're sitting with 20 minutes. You're at 220, which leaves 20 minutes for anybody else. So, regardless of position, regardless of where you put guys, are you going to give 20 minutes to Jabari? Are you going to bump Williams up to like 25, which leaves 15?
It'll work itself out. I don't worry about
Yeah.
that stuff. It's once Brogdon leaves, it'll get much clearer. It's just, and until he does, it's going to be tight.
Yeah. I think it'll be a 9-man rotation. I think Jabari, at least initially, will be kind of that ninth man. Depending on how many minutes they try to give Ayton, they might shave Ayton's down just slightly. I guess it depends on how well he plays. But they've got a lot of young guys that need minutes. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see how Chauncey does this, because I think there's some potential for some hurt feelings. I think Brogdon might not be happy if he's getting less than at least I would say less than 25 minutes. He might start to really be unhappy.
What did you get for Boston last year?
Let's look. I thought it was around that 25, 26 minute mark. 26 minutes
26 minutes for a really good team.
for a really good team. Yeah.
So to get 20 minutes for a bad team, yes, that's probably not going to go well.
I mean, they got to give him
So like
enough
I said,
minutes to show that he still is good, right?
right.
So,
You have to give them enough to get the trade value where you want it to be, and that's going to impact some guys for a while. So until, like I said, until that gets cleared out, it's going to be a log jam, and it's going to get piecemealed, and until somebody gets hurt, or maybe there's a back to back and there's a player out, and then there's going to be some more minutes.
yeah. I don't see a lot of opportunity without injuries this season for Murray. I could see with how well everybody's talking about Kamara, he might bump Jabari, because he's getting a lot of good
He's getting a
press.
lot of props.
So, and I think it's kind of that ninth spot is really up for grabs right now. I don't see Rupert. I'm hoping Rupert plays on the remix this
Yeah,
season.
he's miles away. Defensively, he tries really hard and he's got some length, but offensively, he lost.
Yeah,
He's just young. He'll get more time and he'll get better.
Chauncey did say that he's come miles from where he was 3 months ago, and you kind of take
He works hard.
yeah
He works really hard.
you take this stuff with a grain of salt, right? Because every training camp and media day is always full of BS. But I think Billups did speak very highly of him, so I think they need to find minutes for Brogdon, Thibault, and Williams without sacrificing too many minutes for Scoot and Shaden and Ayton, because like Ayton, I want to play Ayton. I want to feed the beast, right? Like I want that dude to blow up this season. I want him to average 25 and 11. I want him to be an all-star. I mean, that would be fantastic. I don't think it'll happen because it's so hard to get all-star nods, but I would love for him to put up all-star caliber numbers.
The interesting games will be Portland against Phoenix, where you
Oh,
have both Nurk and Aiton trying to prove the other team wrong.
yeah. Except I think
That'll be
Aiton's
very
way
interesting.
better. So I don't I don't think that's gonna go well for Nurk. But
You would think not.
you would think not. So uh
I've got to wrap up.
yep.
I've got a ton to do still tonight and an
Yep.
early day tomorrow.
We're at an hour and 10 minutes. That's a good time to end. So tomorrow is FanFest, which I don't think is televised, which is too bad because they did televise it a couple times. And then the first preseason game is Tuesday against that New Zealand team, which I also don't think is televised. And then after that, they've got I can't remember
That's the
who.
one game. That's the one game Rayan Repair will get minutes in this year.
Yeah, probably. I don't see them really needing to play the big guys.
Oh, it's his old team.
Yeah, it's his old team, and but so that's Tuesday, and then who else do we got?
Thursdays, I forget who Thursday
Jazz.
is.
Jazz are on the 14th at 6 p.m. Suns are on the wait. Nope, I've got that wrong. So Suns are the 12th, so that's the next game. ESPN has it in a weird order. So, yeah, New Zealand on Tuesday, Suns on Thursday, and then Jazz on Saturday. So, and then the
Yeah,
final
actual basketball.
yeah, and then the final preseason game is the Suns again on the 16th. So it does say that the Phoenix games are on NBA TV, but I don't know. Are those blacked out here? I'm honestly not sure. So
Well, if Root Sports is showing them, I think they are.
all right. Well,
I know.
Larry, always a pleasure. We'll probably. I don't. FanFest is bleh, but and even the New Zealand game is bleh. But after that Phoenix game, we'll have to do a show just to talk about how the team did. First impressions, and we could talk about New Zealand as well. But it'll be interesting to see us cut our teeth against Phoenix. All right, sir. We'll have a fantastic night. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, and we will continue to bring our brand of analysis for the rest of the season. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Larry, thanks again, and hope everyone has a fantastic Sunday tomorrow. Go
All right.
Blazers! Happy FanFest!
Good night.
All right, good night.